The kids filed back into class Monday morning. They were very excited. Their weekend assignment was to sell something, then give a talk on productive salesmanship. Little Sally led off. "I sold Girl Scout cookies and I made $30, she said. Proudly, my sales approach was to appeal to the customer's civil spirit and I credit that approach for my obvious success." "Very good," said the teacher. Little Jenny was next. "I sold magazines," she said. "I made $45 and I explained to everyone that magazines would keep them up on current events." "Very good, Jenny," said the teacher. Eventually, it was little Johnny's turn. The teacher held her breath. Little Johnny walked to the front of the classroom and dumped a box full of cash on the teacher's desk. $2, $4.67, he said. $2, $4.67, cried the teacher. "What in the world were you selling?" "Toothbrushes," said little Johnny. "Toothbrushes," echoed the teacher. "How could you possibly sell enough toothbrushes to make that much money?" "I found the busiest corner in town," said little Johnny. "I set up a dip and chip stand. I gave everybody who walked by a free sample. They all said the same thing: 'Hey, this tastes like dog poop.' Then I would say, 'It is dog poop. Wanna buy a toothbrush?' I used the governmental approach of giving you something that they say is good, and then making you pay to get the taste out of your mouth." In their small village, a couple was famous for the husband being 102 years old and his wife being 98 years old, and both in terrific condition, working their farm every day and having the bodies of much younger people. One day, a visitor to the village, curious about the couple, approached the old man at his farm. The old man was cutting wood without a shirt on, sweat glistening on a body that seemed to belong to a man half his age. The visitor introduced himself and asked the old man, "I hear you are 102. "That's correct," said the old man with a smile. "Wow, I must say, you look in amazing shape." "Thank you," said the old man humbly. "Do you mind if I ask Dash? How am I this healthy at my age?" finished the old man. "Help me carry this wood back home and I'll tell you." The visitor agrees, and they make their way inside. "You see," said the old man, "I've been married for 75 years. Now, when we got married, I made a little arrangement with the wife. Every time we have an argument, the loser of said argument must run for 5 kilometers. Seeing as we have a pretty typical marriage, I've been running 5 kilometers almost every day for 75 years. That's why I'm in the great shape I am." "But if that's the case," said the puzzled visitor, "how come your wife is in such great shape too?" "Well," smiled the old man, "she usually runs after me to make sure I finish the whole 5. Little Johnny and his mother were flying US Air from Los Angeles to New York. Little Johnny, who had been looking out the window, turned to his mother and said, "If big dogs have baby dogs, and big cats have baby cats, why don't big planes have baby planes?" His mother, who couldn't think of an answer, told little Johnny to ask the stewardess. So little Johnny asked the stewardess, "If big dogs have baby dogs, and big cats have baby cats, why don't big planes have baby planes?" The stewardess asked, "Did your mother tell you to ask me that?" Little Johnny said that she had. So the stewardess said, "Go tell your mother that US Air always pulls out on time." Johan and Eric, two computer geeks with little social experience, ran into each other at the college entrance. "That's a great bike you have there. What made you get it?" Eric asked Johan. Johan got off the bike, removed his helmet and responded, "I didn't purchase it, Andrea gave it to me as a gift." "As a gift?" Eric exclaimed in surprise. "I always knew she was into you, but this is taking it to a whole new level." Johann smiled and told him, "Yesterday I was strolling in the park and I saw Andrea on this bike. She came to me without saying anything, tossed the bike aside, then took off all her clothes and said, 'Take whatever you want.'" Eric's jaw was hanging loose. "So, I took the bike," Johann finished. Eric nodded in agreement and stated, "Good decision, her clothes wouldn't fit you." A teacher is explaining biology to her 4th grade students. "Human beings are the only animals that stutter," she says. Little Johnny raises his hand. "I had a kitty cat who stuttered," he volunteered. The teacher, knowing how precious some of these stories could become, asked young Johnny to describe the incident. "Well," he began, "I was in the backyard with my kitty and the Rottweiler that lives next door got a running start and before we knew it, he jumped over the fence into our yard." "That must have been scary," said the teacher. "It sure was," said Johnny. "My kitty raised his back, went a fiff, and before he could say, fudge, the Rottweiler ate him." A couple of old ladies were sitting on a patio and speaking to each other about their grandchildren. "I send gifts, greeting cards, and checks to my grandchildren," complains one, "and still they barely visit me." The second old lady said, "Oh, I too send checks to my grandchildren and they visit me all the time." "You are so fortunate to have more grateful grandchildren than my own," said the first one sadly. The second old lady smiled. "No, my grandchildren are about as grateful as yours." "So what do you do differently? Are your checks bigger than mine?" asked the first one, surprised. "No," chuckled the other old lady, "I just don't sign mine." The pretty teacher was concerned with one of her 11-year-old student Johnny. Taking him aside after class one day, she asked, "Johnny, why has your schoolwork been so poor lately?" "I'm in love," the boy replied. Holding back an urge to smile, she asked, "With whom?" "With you," he said. "But Johnny," she said gently, "don't you see how silly that is? It's true that I would like a husband of my own someday. But I don't want a child." "Oh, don't worry," Johnny said reassuringly, "I'll use a rubber." Kevin gets a new secretary. A few days later his wife learns of this new hire, and so he faces a volley of rapid, suspicious questions. "Emma, Kevin's wife, does your new secretary have nice legs?" Kevin, didn't quite notice. "Emma, what color are her eyes?" Kevin, haven't had the time to check. "Emma, what are the nail polish colors she uses, metallic, gel or neon?" Kevin, not a clue in the world. "Emma, does she have a local accent?" Kevin, I barely spoke to her, so don't know. "Emma, how does she dress?" Kevin, very quickly. Kevin's funeral will be held on Tuesday. Little Johnny has a problem. He swears too much. He cusses like a sailor. Johnny's teacher is aware of this, so she is going to be extra careful not to let Johnny cuss today. "Okay, class. We're going to play a game today. I'm going to name a letter of the alphabet and I want you to come up with a word that starts with that letter and put it in a sentence." The kids are excited, especially Johnny, who's thinking of every cuss word he can think of. "Okay, class, let's start with the letter A." Johnny raises his hand. "Susie," the teacher calls. "A is for apple." "Apples grow on trees," she replies. "Very good," the teacher says. "Okay, class, let's do the letter B." Johnny raises his hand excitedly. "Mikey," the teacher calls. "B is for baseball." "Baseball is my favorite sport." "Very good," the teacher says. "Okay, class, let's do the letter C." Johnny raises both hands. He's going nuts. He's got the perfect word for C. Bobby, the teacher calls. C is for cat. A cat lives in my backyard. Very good, the teacher says. This goes on, and the teacher is not going to call on Johnny if there's a cuss word that starts with the letter she calls out. Finally, she gets to the letter R. The teacher can't think of a single cuss word that starts with R, and even Johnny looks a little puzzled. So she calls out R and asks Johnny to respond. Johnny nervously stands up. He looks around the room. Then he says, R is for a rat. He suddenly gets excited and stretches both arms wide. A rat with a D at A this big. A man walks into an antique store and starts looking around. Suddenly, he gazes upon the most stunning bronze statue of a Siamese cat. He asks the store owner how much he wants for the statue. The store owner replies, it's $200 for the statue and $2,000 for the story that goes with it. The man replies, I really don't care about the story, but I do want the statue. As the man is paying for the statue, the shop owner says, all right, but I guarantee you will be back for the story. The man walks out of the shop and starts down the street carrying the cat statue. When he comes to the crosswalk, he happens to glance behind him and sees 3 or 4 cats sitting about 10 feet away, looking at him. He shrugs it off and crosses when the light changes. He goes several more blocks and, at another crosswalk, looks behind himself again. This time there are about 30 cats sitting there looking at him. The man starts to get a little nervous and picks up his pace when the light changes. By the time the man reaches the pier at the end of the street, he has now been running for several blocks. He was running because every time he turned around, there were more and more cats behind him. He looked like the Pied Piper. When he got to the end of the pier, he turned around once more and saw at least 2,000 cats sitting there looking at him. There were so many cats that there was no way to get off the pier without going through them, and he knew there was no way he was going to do that. In a panic, he turned toward the water and heaved the statue as far as he could. Amazingly, all of the cats ran right past him and jumped in the water after the statue and never came out. The man, still shaking from his ordeal, immediately started running back to the shop. As he burst through the door, the shop owner saw him and said, I told you that you'd be back for the story. To heck with the story, gasps the man, do you have a statue of a politician? Hey there, I put a lot of effort into making these videos, so please subscribe for more jokes and stay happy, thank you.